Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of the Ultimate Comics Podcast. My name is Nabeel Gaber, and I'm one of your hosts.
And I am Joshua King, the other host.
This is the podcast where we talk about Ultimate Marvel. It's an imprint of Marvel Comics that began in the year 2000, an attempt to bring Marvel and its characters into the 21st century by starting a new imprint as if all of these characters were just being created and just began in the early 2000s. So we've been going through every episode talking about Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Fantastic Four, the Ultimates, yada yada yada. And this episode, we're back to a small batch of Ultimate X-Men issues. We're talking about issues 46 through 49. And this is a very exciting new jumping on point because we have a new creative team with Brian K. Vaughan writing for like the 5 people on the planet who love comics and don't know about Brian K. Vaughan somehow. Just little known things like Saga, Why the Last Man,
Oh, that's a
even
good one.
Marvel comics like Doctor Strange The Oath, which was pretty much the basis for the Doctor Strange movie in the MCU. I mean, it's
Yeah.
Brian K. Vaughan. It's a big deal. So they got him as the new writer for Ultimate X-Men. And on art, we have Brandon Peterson, who I love and has done a lot of really good stuff. And yeah, this is a pretty interesting arc. A lot of new developments. It's always a big change when a new creative team comes on board. So, Josh, what did you think?
I thought it was fine, but I honestly do not think it was like a big. I didn't think these were special. Not that it's a bad thing. I think the thing with X-Men and to a certain degree Avengers that people love is just how casually the characters are with each other. That after years of being together and writers writing them, the characters have a special relationship, and it's just fun to just see them at that relationship. And that's honestly this
Mm-hmm.
issue, this arc. I don't think anything really special. There's like a couple things that could be bigger down the line, but nothing really happens, in my opinion, that's like inherently a big deal or really special in this arc. But that's fine. Like that's honestly what makes it kind of fun to read.
So you'd say it's just kind of a standard by the numbers kind of storyline. Nothing crucial happens.
I think there's a couple potentially big things, but I don't think it's like we'll get into it, but I like if you were to skip this arc, in my opinion, like as a reader, you would not really miss much. But that's
Mm,
fine. With Ultimate Marvel, because of how sped up so much stuff happens, at least from our perspective, because we're reading it, we're basically semi binging it.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, we're reading an arc every week. Like it seems like we're binging it, but it speeds up really. We go through a lot of issues really quickly. And
Yeah.
so like we haven't actually had a lot of just these casual we've had a few where they're just sitting around and talking, but that's what this one is really.
So you like that? It's kind of more just a slice of life, more
Yeah.
just you get the characters and their interactions and you get to see them just living their lives. And
Yeah.
that's what you
Like
enjoy more.
because I think that's one of the reasons people love the X-Men is like yes, there's this political thing. Yes, everyone has like fancy powers, but the costumes aren't really that spectacular. Everyone has pretty the same ones. And also people live together. They just have fun next to each other. And I feel people really like that slice of life thing.
Totally. And I
Yeah.
think that's what a lot of people enjoy about the X-Men in general, especially even going back to the Chris Claremont run, is that you just have these moments of them, playing baseball or having a pool party or just hanging out together, and you get to see the character dynamics and seeing them all bounce off of each other because a lot of them are very different people, and it's fun to see that dynamic, and they do just
Yeah.
feel like a family in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
But I will say, pushing back, I think this batch of issues is important just for giving us new takes on Mister Sinister for sure is a major villain in the X-Men that gets a big introduction here.
Huh.
and potentially Apocalypse as well. And I say
Yeah.
potentially because we'll get into why and what I mean by that. By the end of this episode, you'll understand what I mean. But it feels like a pretty big deal in that way. And as much as we love the character dynamics and their interactions, and we get a lot of that in these issues, it is I wouldn't I think I misspoke when I said slice of life, because there's still in a lot of life threatening situations here. It's still life or
Okay,
death.
but that makes it slice of life because they're like superheroes slash mutants, so it's still slice of
Yeah.
life if there's yeah, but the stakes are just so low in this one. Like, oh, a couple of
Yeah.
nameless kids die, which is awful in real life, but in
Damn.
okay, it's awful in
Mutant
real
lives
life.
matter too, Josh.
Well, first of all, they're not real. Second of all, if we don't know any of their names, like
I recognized a couple of them, like Marrow and Maggot. I love those characters. How dare
I
you
remember Meryl. That
desecrate their
thing's
names?
yeah, look, they're dead and they're never gonna appear again. Okay, for all we know, they considering this is Ultimate, they've done it a few times. They're like, oh, you killed this character that's very similar to this other character in the comics. I guess that character's dead, and boom, that character comes back as the original character because they're like, no, it was never the character you
Yeah.
loved. It was just like a copy of.
To pull the old switcheroo. Like, oh no, that wasn't Jimmy Olsen. That was Jimmy Olsen's brother, who looks just like him. Sorry, I'm calling out Smallville for that.
Also, Marvel, to be fair, is a little better at this simply because uh, actually, this is also a DC thing where in Watchmen, they're like, Alan Moore, you can't use Batman or any characters because we don't want you to turn them into monsters and killing them off. And Ultimate
Mm-hmm.
Marvel does it because they have like these characters are very similar to the original character. They kill them off, and the original character makes an appearance.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
is entirely true, and that is what happens a lot of the time in Ultimate.
yeah.
Because they're like, oh dang, we actually that was a fun Easter egg cameo at first, but now we actually want to use this character that we killed off in like 5 seconds. So let's just pretend that that never happened.
See, that wasn't Marrow. That was Femur, who just happens to
Yeah.
have the same powers.
Totally different.
Yeah,
Totally different. They were cousins.
yeah. Or like not related. They were just like had the same power and looked the same.
Yeah, but
Um,
no relation.
I'll say this though, we do get some cameos like Mister Sinister, possibly Apocalypse. We get Sunspot, I think,
Yes.
from New
No, that's
Mutants. Yeah,
very
we get
exciting.
yeah. But other than Mister
North
Sinister, like
Star.
North Star. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, that was North Star.
Yeah.
Where was it? Oh, that actually makes sense. But I was like, where's his pointy ears?
I think you're thinking of someone else.
No, North Star is like looks like a fairy. Isn't that the big thing?
I mean, I think he does. I don't think that's his gimmick though.
Oh, well, it's not his gimmick. It's just part of his thing.
Yeah. I mean, it might be Mandela effect, but I think he has pointy ears. I might be confusing him with Namor because they're also like they're both black-haired, arrogant men who have a lot of pride and fly around a lot. So
Yeah. But yeah, like in this thing, like we get a few characters that are like introduced, but like they're just cameos, and like it's not like a big deal when these characters are introduced.
yeah,
To be honest, yeah,
they brush over it pretty quickly, but I don't know. I'm hoping I haven't read all of Ultimate X-Men again. I hope they bring them back.
yeah,
But if we reach the end of the series and they never do, then I'll be like, okay, well, that was just kind of a one-off, I guess. But anyways, we've talked enough about these issues in general terms. Let's dive into the specifics. We start off Ultimate X-Men number 46, where there is a boy on the roof of a high school in New York who is approached by Nightcrawler, who teleports up there. And as soon as Nightcrawler approaches him, the kid gets scared shitless and falls right off the roof, only to be caught by Angel.
who is no longer a twink. He's now like a big, muscular guy who
Yeah,
flies.
he's been putting in those hours in the danger room for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Or they just
Been,
changed the art. That's also a possibility.
I mean, that too. That is also true.
Yeah, I always find these little art changes like costume makes sense, hair makes sense, eyes make sense, even the nose makes sense. But then you get these characters who like go from like skinny kids to like big burly muscular bears, and you go like, there's been like a lot of protein shakes within like a week, man.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a constant fun trope you see in the comics too, is that there are stylistic changes. Sometimes it's with the same artist. You look at Mr. Fantastic in the original Stanley Jack Kirby Fantastic Four run, and Reed starts out looking like a string bean, and by the end, Kirby has him looking like this muscular action hero type,
Well, he gets
and you're like,
powers.
he's been going to the gym. All that stretching's been paying off.
Or he got powers.
Yeah, but even when he did have powers at first, he was still lanky string bean Reed Richards.
He went from classic dork to orc physique.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this scenario is very funny because it's really funny seeing this kid approached by two polar opposites. Just in the past arc, Rogue was commenting on how they have an angel and a demon.
Yeah.
And so you have Nightcrawler just popping up out of nowhere, and then next thing you know, Angel pops up to save him. So this kid, I can't imagine what's going through his head. But what's really funny is that he's like, what is going on? Angel and Nightcrawler thought they were saving him because they thought he was going to jump and commit suicide. But he's like, no, I was just coming up here to think, which is just a very classic Marvel hero trope of they think they're saving the day. And it's like, oh, we were shooting a movie. No one was really in trouble.
It's a trope. I feel in the 2000s like was when like a lot of people were noticing these tropes, and then he goes like, "I can't be a mutant because I'm also gay." It's already topic
Yeah.
one minority.
Yeah, he's like, I cannot be a minority metaphor because I'm already a minority. I'm a gay kid. I had to deal with coming out. Now I have to deal with being a mutant.
Yeah.
Because this kid's name is Jean-Paul Beaubier. And for those of you who don't know, that is the name of North Star, who is in the main universe also a mutant with the same powers this kid has of super speed, also flight. But he's a mainstay on Alpha Flight, later becomes an X-Man. So this is a big introduction here.
It's really weird because I feel in Alpha Flight, a big thing about him is that he's Canadian, Quebecois, and here this is all
Yes.
Manhattan.
Yeah, well, I think he mentions offhand that his dad is like a Canadian ambassador or works in the
I must have
Canadian
missed that.
embassy or something like that. So they're
Yeah.
still Canadian,
Yeah.
but he does
I-
live in New York and go to high school there.
I think this is our first openly gay character in Ultimate Marvel. Like that's like sticks around for more than one issue, which is really interesting because he's also one of the first openly gay X-Men. Though I know they retcon a couple X-Men to be LGBT later on, but
I think, yeah, he's also just one of the first openly gay superheroes, if
in
not the
general,
first. I can't say for sure, but I know his wedding to Kyle is the first gay wedding in mainstream comics in Marvel DC comics. So
yeah.
that was a big deal.
Yeah, but I remember even when they introduced him because I remember this when I was a kid. So actually, never mind. I don't remember if he actually came out before or after I was born. But I do remember his big thing was he was one of the first gay characters. So since they added a ton of other gay characters, which they should, and they also changed or retconned a lot of characters to be LGBT. Though to be fair, I believe
That's
some of them were written to be LGBT, but because of censors, they were not able to show that off at the time.
yeah. Cuff, Iceman.
And Wolverine was also intended to be bisexual.
I think so many characters in the Claremont X-Men run were intended to be bisexual.
And it's interesting because they're written as if they are bisexual. They just are not.
Yeah, because also Claremont was writing under editor-in-chief Jim Shooter, who infamously said that no characters were allowed to be gay. So, yeah, yikes. Angel and Nightcrawler are talking to Jean-Paul, and they want him to join the school, but he doesn't want to go to Xavier's. He's like, this is just like how my mom wanted me to go to Harvey Milk, which he explains is an all-gay school. He's one of these mutants who's like, I don't want to be segregated at Xavier's, which I think is a valid argument and fair. And he also even points out, because they're like, oh, well, we'll keep you safe there. And he's like, your school isn't even safe. Nowhere is safe for us.
It gets attacked a few times.
Yeah. And he also has a point about that. So he kind of just runs away from them, and that's pretty much it. So they tried, really. But then we cut to Colossus and Wolverine training in the Danger Room together.
Yeah.
just blowing off some steam. There's this very intense scene where Colossus is like, I want a real challenge, and he challenges Wolverine to cut him. And Wolverine's like, what? You think you can handle my adamantium claws? And Colossus just like provokes him and like tries to piss him off so he can attack, which works. He just punches Wolverine and Wolverine starts attacking. It's this very intense, like, okay, you guys good kind of scene.
Uh, and watching all this, and also horrified by this intensity, is Emma Frost. She's like, "This is barbaric." Charles says, "They're just boys being boys," and she goes like, "Stop pretending you're okay with this." And he goes like, "I am okay with this. I changed," and she's not okay with
Yeah,
this.
yeah, because as we've learned from the last arc, Emma Frost in this universe is not someone who is okay with this life of violence and does not condone this when it comes to especially teaching her students and also just dealing with the dream of coexistence between mutants and humans. She always wants more peaceful solutions. So, of course, this
Yeah,
would horrify her. But it's also
yeah,
important to note that they talk about everyone's dealing with the loss of Beast, who shockingly
hmm
died at the end of the last arc. And so it's clear as to like why everyone is so high strung, why Charles is kind of detached emotionally. It feels like Emma's like, oh, you, why do you keep insisting on calling your X-Men by mutant names? And she calls him out a lot on how he's been handling Hank's death, how he's been cold, how he's been distant. And she really tries to reach out to the man that she knows he is, the good man, and just generally like, you need to actually stop pretending that you're so cold and callous all the time because I know you have a heart. I like that. I like her acting as his conscience in this. We only get to see very little of Emma in this arc because then she's just like, well, I'm going to go back to Chicago, and any students who want to join me are welcome to join. I mean, she'll be back, I'm sure. It seems like she plans on being back.
I also feel this was like, if this is a way to get rid of her, this is a very lazy way of getting rid of her. It's just her going back to Chicago one day on a whim. Though I really did like her character in Ultimate. I feel like she represents more of a like an actual realistic pedagogical view on mutant education.
Yeah, I see what you mean by it seems like kind of a lazy way to write her out. I also feel like this is really just planting seeds for another storyline in the future where she's going to come back.
Whoa, whoa! This is
You,
Ultimate Marvel. Don't forget.
well, yeah, some things just get lost in the shuffle. Who's to say? I have hope that in down the line in future storylines she'll be back. But yeah, you're right. She does provide a different a balance to Xavier's viewpoints and his way of doing things as well. So
Yeah,
I hope we see her again and get that perspective.
yeah. I really like it because she goes in her convertible because I feel Emma Frost is always written to be pretty wealthy. Havoc joins
Mm-hmm.
her, and then she goes like, "Wait till you meet my other Hellions."
Yeah, that's a fun reference to her
Yeah,
students in the main universe.
I feel this arc has a lot of these weird fan services where they go like, "Yeah, I can't wait till you meet my Hellions. It's a real
Yeah.
alpha flight out of here." Like I feel like there's like some shows or movies that do it too much, and I feel like this arc will be those episodes where they go like, "Oh, we need to bring back the fans, make all these references to 616, make up Hellions, and like just say it, but don't do anything with it."
It's like, oh, that Cable guy, I hear he's got some real X Force behind him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
isn't that
it
isn't that
can
like
be
yeah,
pretty fan servicey,
yeah?
but I enjoy it. I think it's funny.
I think if you're reading this for like the first time, you'll be just very confused. You go like, "What?"
Yeah, I would honestly just brush past it and be like, oh, okay, sure.
Yeah,
Like, whatever. I found it funny. Havoc is the only one to join Emma, too. And I
yeah,
feel like it's also because he doesn't really care much for the life that the X-Men have. And he originally declined to join Xavier's school, too, as they mentioned. So,
yeah.
but it is funny that he is literally the only one. The rest of them are like, I think we'll just stay here. And then we cut to, speaking of fan servicey, because then we get Jean and Cyclops, and Jean, with Scott's permission, takes a walk through Cyclops' mind. And in Scott's mindscape, you have this, he's like, oh, I call this Corsair, which is a sci-fi world that Cyclops made up in his mind as a kid, this space pirate world, which is funny because in the main universe, of course, this is a reference to Cyclops' dad, Christopher Summers, aka Corsair, a space pirate. Josh shaking his head
No,
the
it's
whole
just they do
time.
it twice in a row. It's like Corsair. This is Corsair. Like, what's that? I think it was like the Deadpool's too, and like the latest Deadpool Wolverine. They just make fun of how Marvel and other universes just throw these weird fan servicey references out of nowhere, and they don't do anything with it.
Yeah, I mean, this is still pretty funny. I don't know. I feel like this is very true to Cyclops' character too. Is that, of course, as a kid, he would dream of going into space and having these adventures, fighting aliens and things like that. That sounds very much like Scott Summers. Of course,
Oh,
that would be his
definitely,
childhood dream.
definitely. But what I'm wondering is, how does a kid that's like 7 know what Corsair is just
I
from Star
think
Wars?
he read the Claremont run. That is my only answer.
All
He
right.
read the original Phoenix Saga.
Okay. So he's a precocious little bastard.
That's right. But this is also a very nice, comforting moment where Jean is trying to ease Scott's mind. I don't think we get too many warm moments between Scott and Jean, if I'm being honest, in general. So it's nice to see her going into a brighter spot in his memory just to comfort him, especially after the loss of Beast. Everyone's still grieving and dealing with that. You
Yeah.
have Iceman and Rogue are also just ice skating. Iceman's froze the school pool. And then, of course, Kitty phases down in her bikini and is like, Bobby, you froze the pool? Are you kidding me? So it's a lot of fun. I think everyone's trying to deal with it in their own ways. And speaking of that, then we get Kitty trying to get into her room, which she shares with Storm. And she's like, Storm, open up. And when she phases in, she finds Storm with, there's a broken picture frame on the ground with a picture of Storm and Hank. And then you see Storm and she's just freshly cut her hair. I feel like we've talked about this a little bit, Josh. I think you said Storm's look is more like a grunge look that she has now.
I think I'm not married that it's grunge more than goth or punk, but like it's more 2000s s than like the original Claremont 616 Storm punk goth look. It's
Yeah.
more 2000s esque.
This is a pretty big transformation either way. Storm
Yeah.
has completely reinvented herself and changed her look, and a lot of it is her grieving the loss of Beast since they were dating for most of Ultimate X-Men. And it is, like we've been talking about a little bit, very reminiscent of the Claremont run in that Storm went through this radical transformation into her famous punk look in the 80s where she had got a mohawk and a leather jacket and everything. And just like in Ultimate X-Men in the original comics, Kitty is the one to shockingly like witness alongside the reader Storm's transformation.
Yeah.
And I'm not as big of a fan of it here just because I'm like, so it's really just because her boyfriend died, right?
Well,
Not to
that's
belittle that loss, but I
yeah.
think specifically it just hits a little harder for Storm as an independent character in the Claremont run when it's really more about her internal struggle in the Claremont run, and it's more about her dealing with feelings she's never felt before and dealing with these new experiences of being leader of the X-Men and unleashing a wilder side of herself she hasn't allowed to let free, and all these like complicated issues she had going through the Claremont run of that whole run, the Claremont X-Men run. I would say Storm was the main character. In this one, I'm like, oh, okay, but like you're you're seriously grieving because your boyfriend's dead, and that's valid, but it doesn't hit as hard for me.
I also I we talked about this. I have two defenses of it. One, this is much more sped up, and also her character is very
Mm-hmm.
different. Her arc's very different, and like you said, it's not too. we shouldn't belittle the death of someone, especially it's like, yeah, like it's maybe not the best. Have like, oh, boyfriend died, so you gotta change your hair, but like it's not unrealistic either. Like I'm not gonna say all the
No.
sexist stuff that's in Ultimate is like okay, but like I don't think this is wrong. I feel like she has a different arc. This all takes place, I think, within the span of a year or two. And to be fair, Ultimate Marvel has also
Yeah.
not been out that long. But like she's been through a lot of chaos. She's been a runaway. She finds stability, but then like violence still happens, and now like someone she cared about like dumped, like things ended with him. He brought danger to her, and then he's gone. So there's just a lot of unresolved feelings there. So she needs a new
Yeah.
leaf on life. Lease on life. She needs to flip a new leaf.
Flip a new leaf.
Yeah.
I think just turn over a new leaf is the expression.
Or we could, flip a new leaf.
I'm going to use that from now on. You know what? You're right. Let's
Yeah,
just flip a
flip a
new
new
leaf.
leaf. It's what the people say.
It's a valid take. I understand, and I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
If I didn't have the Claremont run to compare it to, I would be fine. Alas, nothing can really hit my gold standard of the Claremont run.
Yeah, but Claremont also had like 80 issues to do and 3 different series. This is like everyone gets 15 max and then you're out.
Yeah, no, for sure. They did have to speed run it a bit with this one.
Yeah.
But the issue then ends with we see Jean Paul again, the kid who almost fell off the roof at the beginning of the issue, and he's lured into an alley with a guy that has a tattoo on his arm that says Sinister, and he's also got a red diamond on his forehead. And the issue ends as this Sinister guy shoots Jean Paul, like point
Don't forget what he
blank.
says. He says like, you could call me Mister Sinister or something like that.
Yeah. And this is very different from the Mister Sinister that we know because gone is the flamboyant cape and the over the top super villainous outfit. And now we've got a guy with a beanie and a wife beater on and
Straight from
tattoos.
the Pacific Northwest. Straight from Brooklyn.
Yeah, he's kind of a hipster Mister Sinister. It's a little different.
Also, I'm pretty sure this is one of the first times, so we should it's not an overused trope yet. But I also just love how he goes like, "Oh, I'm Sinister, but you could call me Mister Sinister."
It's been done, and it's
I
kind of
think this
cringy,
is
but
like,
it's fine.
but at this point, it's not been done yet. It's like it's just but such a meme trope now, a meme trope.
It is very memeable, yeah.
But this is like I feel that maybe this is the original.
I think they did that before. They've done this, but like even years, decades earlier than that. At the very latest, one of the earliest examples I can think of is in the '90s Batman cartoon when Batman yells "freeze" and he's like, "That's Mister Freeze to you." So, but yeah, we get into the next issue, issue 47, and it opens on Jean Paul almost getting shot, but the bullet freezes in front of him. And then he's approached by Jean, who reveals that, yes, they are in his mind, and they're looking at Jean Paul's memory of being shot so they can identify the shooter. So Jean Paul is not dead, but he is in a coma, is the thing. And it's a really interesting way of opening it up, and it looks like we're kind of there with Jean Paul. We're like, oh, I wasn't shot? No, he was shot, but now they're just reliving it through Jean's retrieval of his memories going in there, which is very cool and interesting to see.
They have definitely done something like this in the past, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Where she just goes inside the mind, retrieves the memory.
I can't think of any off the top of my head, but yeah.
It's very interesting because then they do like the classic sci-fi, and by sci-fi I mean like SYFY. Do you remember that channel?
Yes, yeah, I remember that channel.
She does a sci-fi channel thing where she goes like, "You need to show me what it looks like, and only then can you wake up. You need to move past your trauma to wake up from your coma." And I'm like, "Dude, you just
Yeah,
said he's gonna
exactly.
recover like a minute ago." It's like, so like, does if he just doesn't recover from this, the doctor's like, "I guess we were wrong. He just doesn't wake up."
Yeah, I don't know how that works medically, but yeah, Jean does reveal that 4 other mutants have been shot and killed by the same guy who shot Jean Paul. So she helps Jean Paul be brave and face Sinister so they can get a good look at him and identify him. And as soon as they do that, then yes, Jean Paul wakes up and sees Jean and Colossus in the hospital bed, or next to his
Yeah,
hospital bed.
yeah,
And it's very
and
funny because Jean's like, "This is Colossus." And Jean Paul's immediately like, "Is he single?"
Colossus turns metal.
Yeah, I think Colossus is getting a little defensive there.
Or I thought it was like a sexual metaphor, like he turns hard.
Yeah, I don't think Colossus has come out in this version yet,
I
though.
think it's very clear in this one that is gay. I changed my tune. Him turning hard at the when he gets asked, "Is he single?" makes me think he is gay. Actually,
For me, it's been clear since the Mark Millar Adam Kubert run.
uh,
He's been gay the whole time.
well, now I definitely think it's
It,
gay.
it's been yeah, it's been an interesting ride seeing, and it's funny seeing North Star, another gay character, being like, "Hey, you're cute.
Oh,
You single?"
hey. Yeah,
Yeah, but then we cut to in Midtown Manhattan. The cops are investigating a similar homicide for another mutant, and they're inside this
with
apartment.
Wolverine.
It's this very funny shot of Wolverine just kind of sitting out on the ledge outside the windowsill, just listening in
Mm-hmm.
on the cops.
Yeah,
And he just sneaks right in when the cops aren't even looking in another and they're in another room, and he sniffs the bullet casings, and the cops almost discover that he's there, but he's vanished without a trace. And
yeah.
I really like Wolverine in this batch of issues, mainly because
He's not creeping on the Gene.
yeah, he's not creeping on Jean for one thing, and he's also just a little bit more in the background, in the periphery, which I think was much needed after the first 40 something issues
He's
of this series.
he's supportive of the kids, but is not trying to be one of the kids, and is definitely not trying to bang one of the kids.
Yeah, it's more like X-Men Evolution, where he is the grumpy uncle of the team looking out for the kids, but he's always off doing his own thing.
X-Men Evolution also came around at this time, I think. Like, to be fair.
Yeah, it was around the same time.
Yeah. I do find the detective conversation interesting, where the girl goes, lady detective goes, "I am a mutant," and he goes like, "No, you're not." And he goes, "Yeah, I have like 2 extra ribs," which is like an
Yeah,
interesting development. Like we understand now about the human body is that like in real life mutants exist, but like the mutations are just kind of more mundane. Like you have extra nipples, you have extra. I think like extra ribs and nipples are like the most common, but also you get like some people with like technically superpowers, like they could be underwater slightly longer, or they could digest sugar at a higher rate. Like, and
yeah,
in the universe with like powers, you gotta ask like, are those guys mutants? Is if
yeah,
that's a mutant, why is Spider-Man not a? And it's always these weird things that people make fun of Marvel for, but like Marvel does, to be fair, actually try to answer them sometimes. And sometimes, like now, they have
that's
like
true.
good philosophical questions.
Yeah, like mutation is a very incremental thing, and I think this kind of grounds it in the real world of like maybe more realistically, eventually, smaller mutations can build up to larger mutations and adaptations that will eventually lead to the mutants we see in the X-Men. So I think
Yeah,
that is interesting, the conversation they have.
yeah. It also just it won't always be popping your claws out the first time, you know.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
Some of them can be really small things.
yeah. And to be fair, I feel like some mutants do have like really mundane powers, like, oh, I'm green, but that's it. It's like, how's that different from an extra rib?
Yeah, honestly. Then we cut to Cyclops training the other X-Men pretty hard out in the field. He's blasting Rogue and being like, "Bang, you're dead. That would have killed you." And then he's berating Kitty for how he handled a hypothetical bomb threat, being like, "Wow, your phasing disrupts technology, so you would have just blown everyone up as soon as you touched that thing when he phased through Iceman there." I think this scene is pretty interesting because he's still grieving Beast for sure, and he's pushing everyone harder. But I think this
Hmm.
is classic Cyclops in that he suffers a loss and he definitely plants his feet firmly down and he just pushes harder. He pushes his teammates harder, he pushes himself harder as a leader. And I think this is pretty indicative of the kind of X-Man he is, where he's like, we're not going to go through this again. We got to be prepared. We have to work harder, be smarter,
Yeah.
things like that. So I think it's a good scene.
I think it was actually Bendis' run of X-Men where he has like Cyclops go like, Oh, or not Bendis, the guy before Avengers versus X-Men, where they go like, oh, we gotta like Cyclops has like quotes like, I have plans upon plans. It's not plan 1, 2, or 3 or A, B, C. We have like plans up to 26. It's this kind of Cyclops that we're getting now.
Well, that's from the it's yeah, that's the Kieran Gillen X-Men run.
Yeah,
And that's when yeah, because they're like, okay, is it plan B? And he's like, no, it's plan 2 because like B implies we only have 26.
yeah,
And like Cyclops fans love posting that image all over the internet. And it gets
yeah.
so old because I'm like, that's a great moment. He's also got like a billion other moments that you're not focusing on because you all have to keep repeated. I'm like, it's a good moment. Let's all just shut up about it for a sec.
Well, it's like but this reminds me of it. Like Cyclops is like the soldier of the X-Men, which is
Yes.
funny because Wolverine actually served in the military, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I feel like they're different kinds of soldiers though. I think
yeah.
Cyclops is definitely like maybe like the general would be the word for it. Wolverine
Oh,
is definitely
definitely.
more of a lieutenant.
Yeah, but Cyclops is just incredibly like disciplined and everything like that. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's got
he
a lot
represents.
of discipline to him. And then we cut to Professor X as well, talking to Nick Fury, talking about the case of Sinister going around killing mutants. And Fury's like, well, just leave the case to the local authorities and do not send your kids after this killer. And he's also
and
like, this is a tough time for S.H.I.E.L.D., so we can't be seen giving resources to help what we see as a special interest group.
and that takes off Professor X.
Yeah, which is tough. I think when you work with Shield, you're gonna have to deal with a lot of political red tape and things like that. I
Yeah,
think this is one of the drawbacks and consequences of working with a government agency like Shield. Like you're not going to get easy results every time because there's gonna be something that's like, oh well, we can't be seen helping a special interest group above others.
yeah,
Okay, well, I guess we're on our own then.
yeah. But he also points out like, look, this is like 4 kids died in Manhattan. This is an issue for New York's finest NYPD baby.
Yeah, but I mean, Wolverine will make a point later on. He's like, yeah, the cops do not care, and the
Yeah,
ones that do care can't do anything about it.
yeah. But like Nick Fury makes a point like like they're dealing with stuff with the Avengers, with Spider-Man. They can't exactly be
Yeah,
investigating like a street crime every single time a mutant is killed, for all their faults and stuff they're good at,
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got their hands full. So the X Men are on their own.
Yeah.
And then we get a good scene of Nightcrawler going out to talk to Storm so she can like
Mhm.
join the assembly they're about to have.
Yeah.
And he's like it's a really nice scene where Kurt kind of gets Storm to see reason and join the other X-Men because she really just wants to be left alone and is like threatening him and is like insulting him. And he's basically like, listen, mutants are dying, so if you want to be part of the X-Men still and if you want to help them, come join us.
Yeah.
And so it's a really nice moment. I think we haven't gotten a lot of this in Ultimate X-Men at this point, where Nightcrawler has been the heart of the team and the voice of reason, because I think that is who he is most of the time in the main X-Men comics. So it's
He
great
is
to see that.
he is the good Christian boy of the original X-Men comics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I
Here
think he has a good friendship with Storm in those comics too.
yeah. I mean, like, so far, Nightcrawler has a good friendship with everyone so far in these issues. Like, he hangs out with Kitty. He gives her a German name. He hangs out well with,
Yeah.
later with, what's her face? Jean. You guys could tell I just got back
Yeah.
from work. Working in the sun all day. Protecting the city. I'm not a cop.
But he's a hero.
God damn it, I'm a hero. I know I'm a hero. I literally got thanked by the government for my heroism once, and then I got laid off.
Ain't that just the way?
Hey, I got
That's just how
thanked.
the cookie crumbles.
I know. I got a pizza party. And then they've laid me off. Which I feel is like the most
You
like
should.
Spider-Man esque slash public worker esque thing ever. The government thanks you with a
Yeah,
pizza
that's a
party.
harbinger of doom.
Yeah, you get like the government gives you a pizza party like thank you for risking your life and A, B, C, and D, but we're laying you off. Also, I feel that's a Spider-Man thing. Like J. Jonah Jameson goes, Spider-Man saved the city, so here's a pizza. You're a menace.
I don't even think he would give him the pizza.
Okay, Shield would throw Spider-Man a pizza party and nothing else.
Yeah, probably, but they wouldn't do anything to help him otherwise.
Yeah, I guess they might like do something that only a government could do, but still like really lame compared to what everyone else gets. Like they might go, Spider-Man,
Yeah.
we'll give you your tax returns despite the fact we know you're late on taxes, but don't expect anything
Yeah.
else. We voided your parking
Yeah,
ticket.
that's all you're getting. We cut to the X-Men meeting in the McCoy Memorial Hall, they say, which is a very nice touch. Like, just honoring Beast that way.
Beast wasn't very heroic
Yeah.
towards the end. He kind of just got the X-Men in danger a lot towards the end, actually.
Yeah, but like it's nice that they're memorializing him as their friend and classmate anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, the big moment is the professor is like, we're not going to be searching for this killer, and I'm not going to put the students at risk. Which honestly, this is a rare instance of Professor X saying, hey, I'm not going to use you as child soldiers. This does not happen very often.
Get on the professor.
Yeah,
Get on him doing an Emma Frost.
Everyone else is complaining and being like, what? This is outrageous and ridiculous. But I'm like, man, he's actually seeing sense for a change. Yeah, don't send your students out to find a serial killer.
And he's right. He was like, this is a local police issue.
Yeah, no one's happy about it, but
Yeah.
But then, of course, Wolverine returns, and that's when you get the moment where he's like, the police don't care, and the ones who care can't do anything about it. And he's like, I got nothing from the crime scene. This sinister guy is invisible to pretty much all my senses. He's invisible to cameras. He's invisible to pretty much everything but the naked eye.
Yeah.
And he's like, the only effective way to hunt this guy down is getting out there, pounding the pavement, and going on a manhunt. And so that gets the professor to acquiesce to a little bit. He compromises. He's like, okay, but only the senior class can go. And I like how it feels like the first time they make a clear distinction between junior and senior X-Men, where, all right, this junior X-Men like Iceman, Rogue, Kitty, Angel, they all have to stay behind.
Yeah.
And of course, then Cyclops, Jean, Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus, Wolverine, they all go.
Yeah. Which is funny because Angel is definitely one of the older guys, while Bobby is one of the younger guys, but he's been on the X-Men the longest. But both Angel and Bobby are grounded. Get it with Angel? He's grounded.
Yeah, I get it. It's a classic problem for Iceman, too, where he's the youngest of the original members. He's still a kid, but it's this awkward position to be in where he's like, but I've been with you guys since day one. What?
Yeah.
But he's still young.
Yeah. It's also like the first time the X-Men have grown large enough that we're getting to the point where we can have multiple X-Men teams finally. Like in the
Which
comics.
is great. And what I was complaining about last time was that there were way too many of them. And I'm so glad they finally split them up into separate teams so we can actually give focus to everyone.
Yeah. Now we go to Sinister, who's talking to himself, and this mysterious voice is like, you must deliver me 10 innocent mutant souls. And he goes like, yes, master.
Yeah, he's talking to this mysterious master, and he calls him at the end of issue 47. The big splash page reveal is he's like, yes, Lord of Apocalypse. So it seems like we've got Apocalypse so far from what we've gotten in the storyline. Yeah. So it's a big deal.
You know they're bad guys because they're called Sinister and Apocalypse.
Yeah, then nothing good can come from that. Issue 48 begins with Iceman fighting what looks like the Brood, the aliens from classic X-Men comics, in the Danger Room. But Professor X explains that these are hard light constructs that they're fighting, so they're
just like the original.
Yeah, exactly. Just like in the original Danger Room.
Yeah.
And Iceman is fighting them, and he's like, I'm bored. And Professor X is like, this is too dangerous for you. He explains why they don't go out.
You're not going out because you're not taking these exercises seriously enough.
Yeah, this is a classic X-Men bantering in the Danger Room, talking
Yeah.
about all of their individual issues, like Rogue going on about how they should like kill Sinister when they find him, and Kitty's like, "Oh yeah, it says you worked for Magneto," and she's like, "That was different," and
I was younger.
yeah,
That was
hmm
also like last year. That was like 7 issues ago. Rogue.
it was pretty recent.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't until the end of the Millar run that she joined the X-Men. And there's a fun moment where Dazzler then just shows up drunk from a party, presumably, in the middle of the Danger Room, and the rest of the X-Men is like, we're just taking anyone now?
I think they said she was at a rager in New Jersey. I think.
Yeah. And it's so funny, the dialogue. Like, I think Rogue was like, she smells like my grandfather, and Angel's like, is your grandfather dead? It's just, they're all just dunking on her. It's a very fun dynamic in this scene, and I love how everyone bounces off of each other and they all kind of
Yeah.
like banter, and while you get some cool visuals of them fighting in the Danger Room.
Yeah. And of course, we're
But
getting a bit more of Dazzler, especially because Dazzler said she wasn't gonna join them. I think when we first saw her, and now she's just part of the team.
yeah, because she's really just staying at the X Mansion. She's not one of the X-Men at this point. She's just kind of hanging out.
Well, considering what the rent is in New York City, I don't blame her.
Yeah, like free housing is free housing. Take it.
Yeah.
But it's convenient how Sinister is then talking to Apocalypse, and he's like, I just need 6 more mutants to kill as like a sacrifice. And then there's literally 6 mutants going after him:
Yeah.
Cyclops, Jean, Storm, Wolverine, Colossus, and Nightcrawler.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm like,
he needs 6 innocent mutants, so that knocks Jean and Wolverine off the list.
that's true. I
Yeah.
mean, Colossus was also part of the Russian mob, so I don't know how innocent he is either.
I think he's still innocent. He was a nice guy who was in a bad situation. He was a nice boy. If
That's
I was the
true.
judge, I'd give him community service. I put Wolverine to death, and I put Jean in like prison.
It's impossible to put Wolverine to death.
Exactly. So like, we ain't losing anything.
I mean, unless you like drown him. I know that could kill him.
That's kind of cruel. Like, I know it
Yeah,
works.
exactly. Would you do that? Would you sentence him
No,
to a drowning?
but
Yeah,
also
that's
like,
what I thought.
um, so Nightcrawler and Jean team up, and they talk about like Nightcrawler asks like, "Hey, why is someone like you with someone as like dour?" Is what he says of Cyclops, I think.
Yeah,
And then she goes like, "Who would imagine you just daydreaming of Keira Knightley and Pirates of the Caribbean, which just came out the whole time."
yeah. It was pretty
Yeah,
timely.
yeah,
And it's
um,
still a classic.
yeah. And also, I think Jean says, "I'm a Cosmo subscriber. Like, I know stuff," and I'm like, "What?" Such a
Yeah,
odd line.
meaning she knows that men are rarely what they seem.
That is not what happens in Cosmo. I
Well, I'm
think.
glad to hear that you read Cosmo.
I do not read Cosmo. I don't even think Cosmo is still around.
It might be. Who knows? But you
I
would be the first to know. I'll tell you that.
oh no. Like Cosmo is the stuff like Carrie from Sex and the City reads all the time.
Well, you know all about Sex and the City.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Anyways, you've been calling me a Miranda for months.
It's not true. It has not been months.
I will. I have receipts.
Okay.
But yeah, it is this interesting bit of dialogue with Jean and Nightcrawler, because she also explains that she can like mentally overhears people's fantasies. She doesn't mean to listen in, but sometimes people's thoughts are so loud. So she knows stuff about Nightcrawler just daydreaming about being a swashbuckling pirate in Pirates of the Caribbean, which is pretty accurate to his character.
It's a nice callback because he loves pirates in the comic 616, I believe.
Yeah, exactly.
He has
So I
swords.
I love the characterization in these issues. Yeah,
Yeah.
he loves swords. He loves pirates. He loves being a swashbuckler. I mean, just read the original Excalibur run. You know what we're
He
talking about.
Yeah, he literally transforms into he was Spider-Man for a bit, with just swashbuckling with swords as
Yeah,
Spider-Man.
that was very fun.
Yeah,
Then we get a brief cameo by Sunspot. Nightcrawler and Jean are on the roof, and they get attacked by Sunspot, who thinks that they're some of the people hunting down mutants, but they manage to explain themselves, and they're like, "Hey, we're actually after the killer too," and he recognizes them as the X-Men.
yeah,
But of course, Sunspot does not want their help because he calls out the X-Men for not like helping his neighborhood. He lists off a bunch of like hate crimes they've been through as mutants, especially in response to all the Magneto attacks and stuff. They've been like
Yeah.
dealing with a lot of hate by people in the neighborhood, and he like
Yeah.
rejects their help flat out because he's like, "Oh, you're coming down from your ivory tower," which is it's a good moment because I think Sunspot's a good character to
Yeah.
deliver this speech to them because I think he has always been the one to kind of speak truth to power and to talk back of the original New Mutants. I mean,
Yeah.
so has Danny Moonstar as well.
Yeah.
But also, this is a common, I think, trope of a classic staple of the X-Men. The X-Men and the people at Xavier's being seen as like elites by other classes, you would say, of mutants who
Hmm.
think that the X-Men just look down on them and don't really know what it's like. Like the
Yeah.
Morlocks. There will always be mutants that have it harder than the X-Men, and they see it as like the X-Men don't really get what they're going through.
Yeah. When Sunspot attacks and Jean's the one that beats him, I actually thought she went Phoenix Force for a bit because like everything just lit up on fire for a bit, and I was like, oh no, that's just Sunspot using his sun power.
Yeah.
But
It
also,
did seem like she went Phoenix a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, maybe she used the Phoenix Force to like just move the flames out of her and Nightcrawler's way. It's also really interesting because like Sunspot kind of feels like a lot of the voices we get now from like Hispanic and undocumented communities about like some of the rougher stuff that's going on in the government. But I'm
Hmm.
like, well, Sunspot in the original comics is also a billionaire, so
That's true. Yeah, he's
they
pretty
changed
different
it.
from the privileged. I mean, I think, yeah, Sunspot in the original comics is very privileged because he does come from money, but he
Yeah,
also does deal with a lot of prejudice on his own, just being biracial for one thing, because he's Brazilian and his father is black, and so
yeah,
he himself being half black, one like his origin comes from like losing his temper because he's being bullied by like a racist on his soccer team. So
yeah,
he does deal with his fair share of issues, but this version definitely is more in touch with working class and less privileged. So he's able to give this speech a lot better.
yeah. It's a big change, but not like a terrible one.
No,
Honestly,
no,
one of
it's
the better
good.
ones. Because I think like now, if you read right, like it's kind of like what Bendis and a few others have said about Ultimate. They're like we envision Ultimate as like, what if we were to rewrite Marvel now? And they go like, well, we changed Peter Parker a bit, and one of the things that he's with Sunspot is like, well, you got to change some of the characters a bit. Though of course, like
Yeah,
with Mister Sinister, it's like I get it. I feel that's how you write Sinister feels written now, but still, it's just such like you said, it's just such a dramatic change.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, he turns from the villain, one of the villains of X Men, to a villain of the week. Unfortunately.
Yeah, he is
Yeah,
very much.
yeah,
We cut to Colossus and Cyclops, then are off, and they're in the middle of fighting Colossus's old uh, Colossus's old Russian mob friends. Apparently, they tried to get information out of them, but the mob started attacking because they're upset that Peter left them.
hmm
And there's a fun moment too in the fight scene where one of the mobsters has Cyclops at gunpoint, but Cyclops just shoots Colossus and the blast ricochets off of his body and hits the mobster next to him, which is
and,
very fun.
and Colossus asks like, "Did you know it was gonna do that?" And Cyclops goes, "We gotta keep moving."
Yeah, I'm like, okay, well, we'll never know now.
Yeah, Colossus has like it's not a big character in this one, but he has a couple fun moments here.
Yeah, I think everyone gets a lot of fun little moments in these issues, which is
Yeah,
great,
yeah,
which is what I like about these issues.
yeah. No, like that's what I was saying. I felt this was like why it was this very standard issue, but also the kind of stuff we love about X Men, just the characters talking and interacting with each other.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
And speaking of which, then we get Storm and Wolverine walking around, and there's this nice moment where Storm thanks Wolverine, and he's like, "For what?" And I didn't say anything, and she's like, "Exactly. You're not constantly trying to talk to me about all this stuff like everyone else, like what she's going through and her grief and everything." And Logan goes on a whole grumpy old man rant, and he's like, "Yeah, you see all these kids out there that the world hurts them so bad, and they just want to push the pain away." but they also want the world to know that they're, so they dress super flamboyantly and they stand out, but they also gather in a crowd and they, become a gang. And so he goes on this whole thing. It's a pretty insightful monologue, I think. And she's just like, wow, you're a grumpy old man.
Yeah. Also, he's seen death before. Like, to
Yeah.
her, Hank is probably like the first big death in a while, or like it's definitely probably her first romantic death, like the death of a partner.
Yes.
Wolverine has been through like multiple deaths of multiple partners and friends and all that. Like, death is nothing to him.
Yeah. A big thing about Wolverine is that most people he's known and loved have died on him. So it's a very
Yeah,
tragic element to the character that he gets.
yeah. And there's like a weird thing, but like all of them died tragically. But if they didn't die tragically, I'm like, well, by math, they still would be dead, and you'd still be sad.
Yeah, because he's basically immortal at this point.
Yeah, exactly. They go to a tattoo, and there's that famous line where it says, "I love tattoos, but they go away after a bit. I just use them to get girlfriends," which I think is
Yeah.
also like a line that Reddit and comic forums have just picked out. Wolverine just people just love these Wolverine being a sleazebag moments, mostly
Yeah,
from Ultimate.
because I like to just call out the X-Men subreddit because a good chunk of people on the X-Men subreddit love just shitting on Wolverine because Wolverine's cool and anything that's cool in mainstream can't be actually cool in their eyes. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they'll post panels and images of stuff like this.
Yeah.
But in the story, yeah, like they spot this tattoo place and Wolverine recognizes that it's got the same lettering that Sinister's tattoo did. So they go in there and Wolverine and Storm start threatening the tattoo artist in there for information. And he's not scared at first, the guy, but then Storm uses a bunch of different techniques and describes a bunch of really disturbing types of weather that could
Yeah.
actually like really hurt, like ball lightning or acid fog, just
And then
showing like how dangerous her power can be.
she says, "Mother Nature is a mutant."
Yeah.
It's a riff on the famous line, "God is a mutant," though.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
It's also an overdone trope because now we said God is a woman, God is a vampire,
Yeah.
God is a God is everything at this point. Like, which is the point
Yeah.
of God to begin with. So
Amen.
yeah, I mean, no, but we went in circles.
Yeah. But the guy breaks and he gives up. The guy's reveals Sinister's name, which is Essex, and he reveals where the guy lives.
Yeah.
And so Wolverine and Storm break into this place, and all they find is this spooky looking Apocalypse mannequin, which makes us think maybe Apocalypse isn't real and this Sinister is just hearing things.
I actually thought that was a Captain America mannequin at first.
Well, it looks just like Apocalypse.
Yeah.
But yeah, then Logan sees the board of Sinister's targets, and he realizes that the target is Professor X and the other students. And so they're like, he's at the school. And the final page of issue 48 is really just an image of Sinister with a gun outside of Xavier's. And is it wrong that Pumped Up Kicks came into my head in that moment?
Yes, because that was like long before Pumped Up Kicks.
I couldn't help it. I was like, oh my god,
You're just thinking of
this
all the
man's
other
gonna
kids
shoot
with
up
their
a
pumped up
school.
kick. You were just thinking of all the other
Better run,
kids
better run.
faster than his bullet.
Yeah.
I still love that song. I know, like, it's like I just love that song. It's a fun song. It's the song of my high school years. It's the last generation of songs before I stopped mostly paying attention to new music. I'll be honest.
Yeah, it's also about school shooting.
Yeah, well, it came out of my high school, and yeah, but it's like Pumped Up Kicks, Taylor Swift, and then Billie Eilish, and then I stopped paying attention again.
I mean, Billie Eilish and Taylor Swift have been making lots of new music since then.
Well, I have not listened to any of their new music.
Well, you should. It's great.
I don't know. Didn't she just write Bad Girl or Bad Boy or whatever it was called?
It's Bad Guy.
Is it? Oh, Bad. Yeah. It was a weird
Eh,
song. I only know it because my sister sang it once.
There's a lot of other good stuff too. That's
Yeah.
not just that.
Okay. Issue 49, Professor X is like watching the kids. Bobby and Rogue are getting really close. Like, he's putting his hands around her shoulder. which is not
Hmm.
really a smart move. Like maybe I don't know if it works for
No.
guys when they're hitting on girls, but don't do that with Rogue. Like even if she likes you, honestly,
Yeah.
if she likes you, it might make it worse. And I know they got over it in
Yeah.
the comics, but
Physical contact is just not a good idea.
yeah. Sinister goes like, "There you are, pervy Professor X," which is also a thing we all say about X Professor X now. And he goes like, "I have your I know your one true weakness." Stares and just pushes the guy because his immune to psychic attacks, so he just pushes Professor X down the stairs, which is
Yeah, which is an infamous page that has constantly been posted out of context online because everyone's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, even in context, even this scene is unhinged and insane. How crazy. Push the guy in a wheelchair down the stairs. And the dialogue, his one weakness, stairs. I was like, Jesus, this shit would be blowing up if it got written today.
yeah.
People would be like
It's
losing their
it's also like
minds.
a weird trope of like it's the same thing whenever they're like, we're fighting this villain. We know what could beat him? The stairs, because that also happens with like the Daleks when they come out on Doctor. They go like, "You can't go up the stairs," or like that Joe character from Family Guy. And I don't know why they keep insisting as if this is like a funny line. It's aged badly.
Yeah, yeah, it's very ableist.
It's yeah, and like everyone says it over and over again. It's to the point where like you guys just like making fun of people on wheelchairs. It's not. It's cruel now. At a certain point.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it makes sense for Sinister to do it because he's the villain, but like,
Yeah,
yikes.
yeah,
Woof. Meanwhile, the rest of the X Men are panicking and rushing home in the jet, and Jean can't reach the professor telepathically, and she's just hoping that he's asleep. Professor X, in a sense, is because he's unconscious on the ground, and Sinister's about to kill him, but then Iceman arrives and freezes Sinister's hands and is really doing well. I think the
yeah.
problem is Iceman is talking way too much, giving Sinister the chance to break free and then shoot him.
I don't understand that because Sinister in this one doesn't have super strength. He just breaks free and shoots through the ice and it knocks him down.
Yeah. Sinister's powers seem to just be hypnosis pretty much and mind control.
Yeah, we know that like the ice could take the bullet later. So I'm like, how does like it's not like a big gun; it's just a regular gun. He breaks through and he shoots through the ice, and I'm like, it can't go through Bobby. So like, how to go? Yeah. Anyway, it's just a weird
Yeah.
plot thing.
No, it's crazy. And then Rogue shows up and because she's concerned for Bobby, and she almost gets shot, but then we see that Kitty has touched Rogue and let her absorb her phasing power,
Hmm.
so that way they can escape and phase through the floor. And
Yeah.
then we get Angel who comes in and uses his wings as I have never seen Angel use his wings offensively like this because he knocks the guns out of Sinister's hands with his wings.
This is post Pokemon where we now know like you could just use your wings as an attack.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a fair point.
Yeah, but everyone saw it on Pokemon. Was like, damn, you could just use the wings. But yeah, but like I don't know, Angel always gets made fun of for being the most useless X Men. Here, he's the one guy that actually beat Sinister in the physical fight.
That's true.
Yeah,
And he does look very heroic and muscular standing in front of Sinister with his wings out and everything.
yeah,
Of course, then Sinister uses his power to he mentally tells Angel to choke himself. So
yeah.
Angel starts strangling himself. And of course, when I hear him say choke yourself, I'm like, oh, kinky, but okay.
I mean,
That's
makes sense. Angel went from a twink to a bear, like me, like a big, burly bear, like a beast of a
I
man.
wouldn't I wouldn't go that far. Like I think there's in between on that spectrum.
He's
There isn't
literally covered
just
in feathers.
twink and bear. He's not like furry though.
He's covered. He has wings. But Sinister also goes on a weird rant where he goes like, "Where are you from? You're not from heaven. I believe in reincarnation, which is like the spiritual form of evolution."
Yeah. So he
Yeah,
goes on about basically about how he's obsessed with evolution in a sense, which I think gives him that same motivation as Sinister from 616 from the main universe,
yeah,
where that Sinister is obsessed with evolution and genetics and experimenting with that.
yeah.
So, as different as this version is from the original, in that sense, essentially they have a lot of similarities.
Yeah. Dazzler uh, Dazzler wakes up from her drunken super long enough to actually rescue Angel and shoot down Sinister. It's really interesting because she does a thing where she points her hand like a gun and beams you out of the wall. She's singing a song, which is not that far from the original thing, but it's a funny visual.
Yeah, she just shoots him out the window while singing because
Yeah,
that's how she uses her powers, turning sound into light.
yeah, and then like he's on the ground and she's like pointing her, she's doing a finger gun at him, and I'm like, oh, so he's
Hmm.
saying you just gotta break out some T Swizzle and he's dead.
Yeah. But unfortunately, then Sinister gets her at knife point
Yeah,
and has Dazzler hostage. And Rogue pulls a gun on him, thinking that he killed Bobby. And of course, Kitty pops up and is like, no, wait, Bobby's alive.
the ice took the shot.
Yeah, exactly. And Angel tries to stop Rogue from shooting Sinister, but accidentally then touches her. So then, of course, she grows wings and gets his powers, which allows her to just grab Sinister and fly him into the sky
Yeah,
with the intention to kill him, just drop him. Luckily, Storm arrives just in time to convince Rogue not to kill Sinister, and she gives a really good speech about. I think they've done this a few times, at least in this series, where she's like, if we're supposed to be the next stage in evolution, we have to find a better solution than this,
yeah.
and we have to be better.
There's a great line where she goes like, "He's just the same as those monsters that killed Hank," and she go like, "I know Hank would have wanted us to also become the same monsters."
Yeah, which is cool. It's great seeing Nightcrawler's advice to Storm then echoed back towards Rogue from the Storm. You can
Hmm.
see her growth and her change from this story arc, and seeing at the beginning of the storyline she was grieving and she was angsty and she didn't want anything to do with all of this. And now she's convincing Rogue, let's not kill him and let's be better and let's
Yeah,
be heroes because that's what Hank would have wanted. And so Rogue then just punches Sinister and they fly home.
she's like, "I must have absorbed some of Angel's goodness. I must have absorbed some of his halo," is what she says.
Yeah, which is very funny. I think
Yeah,
that's just the thing with Rogue where she's not always sure how much of what she has in her head is hers and what
yeah.
is stuff she's absorbed from other people.
I think she was
So
just
that
making a
isn't.
joke.
Yeah, I think so too. But it is
Yeah,
an interesting line
yeah,
nonetheless. That's just
yeah,
me reading into it.
yeah,
But yeah, Fury and Shield take Sinister into custody, and it's revealed that Sinister was a former employee of this company in New Orleans that was a subsidiary of Oscorp. So
yeah.
once again, everything is Oscorp's fault.
Well, this is like the big theme of Marvel, Ultimate Marvel. I feel it's the genetics. Is that like Oscorp and Shield just keep messing with things that they don't understand, and they keep creating bigger
Mm-hmm.
monsters. Well, to be fair, Shield doesn't mean to create bigger monsters, while Oscorp does. So no blame on Oscorp. They're just doing their thing. Shield should know better. Oscorp doesn't know better. They're just gonna, no one's angry when a bear eats a person. Like that's what you get for going near a bear, and that's Oscorp.
Yeah.
Going back to the bear thing.
Going away from the bear thing, yeah, it's revealed that Sinister was working on hypnosis and urban stealth weaponry, and he tested it on himself, as villains often do, which turned him nuts, as often happens. And so he's taken into custody, and there's a nice moment where Professor X tells Storm that he's proud of them all and he shouldn't force them to stay on the grounds. It was wrong of him to do that. He's like, they're not safe at the school, even as we've seen here. And if they're
Yeah,
going to be part of the world, he's saying he should let them grow and let them learn to be part of it
yeah,
today and now,
yeah,
which is sweet. And it's a good moment between the two
yeah.
of them.
You know, there's all these moments where Professor X goes, "We need to be better than we're the next stage," and it always says, I always felt that it comes from a point of elitism, of his own version of mutant superiority. I think now that the writing has changed a bit, you're getting more and more of like the humane side of Professor X to a certain degree, where he goes like, "We're not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not us about being better. It's about us to a certain degree being allowed." Okay, you know what? You guys know what I'm talking about. I am phrasing this very badly. It is about us being kind and being better by being kind, to
Yeah,
inspire
that's right.
humans to be like mutants, which they will become mutants anyway.
Yeah, and it's about us learning to improve and grow and change ourselves.
Yeah.
And in that way, by allowing his students to be more than just students, but to be their own people, that is a
Mhm.
growth and a change in a positive direction. At the end of this arc, then the last scene we get is Sinister in the Triskelion being held by S.H.I.E.L.D., and he's hearing voices and he's saying he'll do anything because Apocalypse is pretty much saying, "You failed me, and this is the last you'll hear of me." But then he's like, "I'll do anything." And then Apocalypse literally, the issue just ends with Apocalypse going, "Choke
Choke
yourself."
yourself.
And this is a full page where we actually see Apocalypse, who we have not seen for this whole arc. And it's unclear as to whether this is all in Sinister's head or if Apocalypse is actually there at this point, I think is a big thing. It really reminds me of Thor in the Ultimates, that whole idea of like, is Thor a god or is he just delusional? Or same thing with Phoenix in this, is like Phoenix this cosmic entity or is this just the physical manifestation of Jean's full potential? It's very much Ultimate in that way of, so far we can't really tell. It's a little ambiguous, which I kind of like. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, we don't know for sure if this is Apocalypse, but that's pretty interesting. Could
It's
be.
also Apocalypse in all of his 616 glory. He looks very, very close to 616, but skinnier.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He's just a little smaller than his main universe counterpart, but he does have that classic apocalypse look, undeniably.
Yeah.
Which is different than Mister Sinister in this, because Mister Sinister is literally just a random dude with a gun, which is
Mhm.
also very Ultimate. They're like, you know what, let's tone down all the flamboyant, colorful, comic booky supervillainy for some of these guys,
Mhm.
and let's just make him a dude with a gun.
Yeah. Very Pacific Northwest, very Brooklyn, 2000-esque era gangster with the white tee, beanie, tattoos. I don't hate it. If it wasn't for the fact I wish, because I feel they changed a lot of characters to try to make them more modern and less comic-y. But the way
Mm-hmm.
they turned him is not just like, oh, they gave him this weird 2000s gimmick. It's like they turned him from like a big threat, like a he is a threat to X-Men as a whole, to Monster of the Week. Realistically, most of the X-Men, if they had time and knew he was coming, could have beaten him, except Professor
Yeah,
X. Yeah,
totally.
like Jean, not Jean and Kitty could have beaten him. Kitty could have beaten him herself if she knew she was coming. He was coming. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's quote unquote realistic, and it is a scary fear of a guy with a gun storming your school and attacking, and also someone stalking the streets for mutants and being a serial killer. That's a very real
Yeah.
fear, for sure.
Even the school shooting thing's a very real fear because like Columbine had just happened by now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, it is realistic in that sense. It's just also very far off from what we would normally get from Mister Sinister, the version that we know. And it doesn't feel like, for the X-Men, a very menacing physical threat. I mean, he does have his mental powers, so at least he's got that on them. But other than that,
It's I do like it. I mean, I don't think the villain of the week was the best, but I don't hate it to be honest. I really like this one. I wouldn't say it's in my top 5 or top 10, but I did like this arc. I am
yeah, it's
fond
a
of
good
it.
arc.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. I think it was good overall. I think the characters were all written well. I think the dynamics were done. Again, the cast was balanced so well,
Yeah.
and like the artwork was great. Yeah, I thought it was really well done, and I look forward to more from this creative team, because I think, I don't know, it's nice that we finally get the balance that I was looking for. We get two separate teams. We get a little less focus on Wolverine. We get to see just the X-Men being a school and also a superhero team. So, yeah, no complaints here other than some of the stuff I've already said, but we're done with my complaints. I'm done complaining. All right. Well, any final thoughts, Josh?
You guys know, I really like this arc. I don't think some of the stuff has aged very well. I think Mister Sinister would not have been written if we were to redo Ultimate, and they're redoing Ultimate now. So that's silly. Sinister would not be written this way. This one, but overall, I feel what people like about the X Men, we're getting it. They deal with real problems, be it in like a funny, comic-y way, but they're also
Hmm.
real people in a funny, comic-y way. So you just have these very human interactions. We see Beast and Rogue like getting snoozy with each other. We see them like fighting over roommate stuff, like Kitty wants to swim, but but Iceman. Sorry if I said Beast. Iceman throws the pool. Was
Yeah,
I
that's
saying
right.
Beast earlier, or
Yeah, you did, but I'm glad you caught yourself.
and Colossus is dealing with the issues of being like a young gay teenager in New York. Uh, Also, I forgot to mention this. So I often misspell the sometimes on purpose, usually on accident. I keep it on purpose. I make mistakes on the script, and sometimes I
Hmm.
will keep the mistakes as a joke on the script. But I wrote it as Sexman 46 to 49 on the as
You
the
did.
title,
That looked
and
pretty intentional to me.
uh, however, a character says Sexman in this one in issue 47 or 46. North Star goes, "You mean the Sexmen or something?" So he makes a Sexman joke. So it was appropriate for
I
this arc.
think I think the joke was when Jean was like, "Oh, we're the X-Men," and hold any of your sex change jokes because get it, X-Men,
Uh
which
huh.
yeah, so that's probably what we're referring to, but this is
Yes,
just like when you said ultimate sex in the script.
that's right.
All right, anything else you want to add, Josh?
I think I've said my pieces.
Me too. Yeah, all around very fun issues and good short arc, and I look forward to more. Yeah,
Mhm.
but Josh, in the meantime, if listeners want to get in touch with us, what's our email?
It is ultimatecomicspodcast at gmail.com. That is comics. That is comics plural and podcast singular. So ultimate comics podcast at gmail.com.
That is right. And yeah, email us with your thoughts on these issues, on the Ultimate Universe, on Marvel in general, what you think of the show, pretty much anything. And we could read it on the podcast. We also have an Instagram, Ultimate Comics Podcast, a YouTube channel, Ultimate Comics Podcast, and we have a TikTok on Ultimate Comics Podcast. So we have a bunch of social media, like our Reels, our TikToks, our YouTube short videos. We have full episodes on YouTube too, along with Spotify. If you want to see our beautiful faces for the full hour and a half, we have them on YouTube.
You know, you guys are the reason I am forced to dress up for this now.
Exactly. Josh has no choice. He's cornered.
I know. I went from like wearing a wife beater with my beanie, showing off all my tats and my one gun, to not having to
Yeah,
put on a shirt.
you were the inspiration for Ultimate Sinister.
Yes, even though like I was like 3 when this came out.
Time travel, baby.
Yeah, just like the X Men.
Exactly. Follow us on social media. Send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. And yeah, next time we'll be back to Ultimate Spider Man. We'll be covering Ultimate Spider Man issues 60 to 65.
Back to
And
Spooderman.
back to Spooderman, right
Yeah,
where we began. It's going to be great. I'm so
right
excited.
back
I
where
love it,
we started from,
as they say.
as they say.
All right, everyone. But until next time, take care. Make mine Ultimate Marvel. Bye bye.